leading litigator in this case against Merck, is here to tell us about it. Michael.
So I'm a lawyer, and so I came with documents to talk about and a couple stories. So I'm going to pull some of them out so you can see them. And then if you want to look at them, some of them are pretty cool. So hold on a sec. It's not a magic act.
You think so? Make lawyers to defend this. These things. I was trying to think about.
Okay, so about 6 years ago, BC, that's before confirmation, my backdoor neighbor, Bobby Kennedy, and co-counsel in the Monsanto Roundup cases suggested that the next project that we should undertake might be going after vaccines and doing something similar to what we did with Monsanto, which was to get their internal documents, review them, get the hot smoking gun documents, declassify them, and publish them. And in Monsanto, they became known as the Monsanto Papers. They got circulated around the world, made major legislative changes around the world. We want to do something similar with vaccines. And I said, well, Bobby, I've been litigating pharmaceutical cases for like 35 years, and there is, there's immunity against vaccines. How do you get around that? And so he thought it might be a good idea to introduce using the book that Mary and Kim Mack Rosenberg and Eileen Iorio wrote, HPV Vaccines on Trial, and use that as sort of a roadmap for litigating against a vaccine company and to get at their internal documents and find the hot documents in there, the smoking guns, declassify them, and publish them. And in the process, hopefully get compensation for injured people from that vaccine. So he introduced us to some people who were vaccine injury compensation program lawyers who taught us that the immunity that my whole career and every lawyer that I knew assumed that there was immunity for vaccine companies against injuries caused by their by their vaccines. Turned out that you just have to go into the vaccine injury compensation program for 240 days, and if you don't get a successful result from it, like get good compensation from the government for an injury caused by a vaccine, if you don't like what you get, and mostly people didn't like what they got, you can exit the vaccine injury compensation program and sue the vaccine company in civil court. Now, most people didn't do that. Most lawyers didn't do that. Most lawyers had, like I thought, the misconception of the dogma that you cannot sue vaccine companies in civil court. You cannot get at their internal documents. You cannot conduct discovery and take depositions of their personnel on these documents that we got our hands on. So, fast forward, CHD and Bobby and some of the vaccine injury program lawyers taught us how to take a case, put it through the vaccine injury program, bring it out, and file suit. We did that with Gardasil. A friend of ours, Saul Adjuvat, had a case filed. And we thought, okay, well, that will be our exemplar case, the proof of concept to other lawyers of how to get this done. And Saul Adjuvat had a case that went through the vaccine injury program, did not like the result, exited, and he filed suit on this woman's behalf in Los Angeles. Bobby talked us into taking that case and conducting discovery, because he didn't have the capacity to litigate against a pharmaceutical company. They are very difficult to litigate against. They cost millions of dollars, and they are persistent in refusing to give documents. So he didn't have much in the way of discovery done, didn't have much other than help from CHD, from Eileen Iorio, from Norma Erickson, from Emily Tarsal. He had a bunch of documents that were collected outside of discovery, and then we came in and got 25 million pages of internal documents. And we put CHD personnel like Eileen Iorio, Emily Tarsal, Norma Erickson, some of my team, pharma team, Dr. Lehman McHenry, Arlene Testatori, and set them loose. We set up a database. One of the major pharma database managers was sympathetic to our cause because of Bobby, and let us set up a database in their system less expensively than it would ordinarily have cost. So we had a searchable database of their 25 million pages of internal documents, and that was just the beginning. And we set these people loose in there doing search terms for hot documents. And they found a bunch. And those became the backbone of about 15 or 20 depositions that I took of their people and stuck the documents in front of them, which essentially showed that they were aware of Merck's product, Gardasil, inducing autoimmune conditions like POTS and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which means that when you stand up, you faint because the blood goes down to your feet, and you faint because you don't have blood in your head. And it's a debilitating injury that can result in athletic girls becoming wheelchair bound. So those documents showed that there was starting from when Gardasil came on the market, and within a few years of when people figured out how to diagnose it. It takes about 4.5 years to diagnose it. About 4.5 years after it gets on the market in a place, these injuries start showing up, and they would downgrade them. So we got documents. For instance, there was a bunch of Japanese, a cohort, an outbreak in Japan. All the physicians deemed them to be undeniably related, that's the term, to the Gardasil injections. And internally, Merck's people changed all of their undeniably related assessments, the causality assessments, to not related. So similarly, in Europe, same program, same project, type of thing. There would be autoimmune conditions like POTS, deemed by the physicians who were experts in the field, that some of them were actually former principal investigators for Merck doing clinical trials on Gardasil, and they deemed these cases to be caused by Gardasil. And then they changed the assessments. So that's, for a couple years, we've been gathering those documents up and taking depositions of their people and turning that information over to our experts. So we've got major, super qualified experts, Stanford, Yehuda Schoenfeld out of Israel, probably the leading immunologist in the world, his assistant and protege, Lucia Tomlovich, who wrote multiple articles on Gardasil inducing these types of conditions, And we had the good fortune of being able to hire her and let her loose in the database. And it was like, that is
Good.
something I'm sure Merck did not like to hear. So she wrote, this expert report, like 320 pages long, single space, analyzing the hot docs and smoking guns that she and the rest of the team were able to find in the Gardasil database. It is now declassified. That means in that one little Los Angeles case that started everything, we were able to get the judge in that case to rule that we get past summary judgment. This was where the defendants tried to kick us out before we get to trial. We got past, they're kicking out all of our experts because they're not qualified and didn't use a proper methodology. She rejected that. She rejected their preemption argument, which is one of the main ways pharmaceutical companies get around lawsuits, is by saying that the FDA has already said the warning label is okay, so you can't file suit. It's preempted. We got by all of those, and in the process, she said, the lawsuits and our courtrooms are open forums, and I'm against any of these documents keeping confidentiality, even though you got them under a confidentially protective order. So she basically let us have all these documents declassified. So I've got this expert report, Sinhan Lee's expert report. Some of you may have seen the recent articles by Marianne DeMasi on that report. Sinhan Lee is a pathologist, former Yale professor, that was handed some Gardasil vials and was asked to see if there was any HPV DNA in it. HPV is a human papillomavirus, and he was an expert at conducting a type of PCR testing called Sanger sequencing. He identified exact sequences for the HPV strains that are in Gardasil, and found that there was still residue of the HPV, it was called the L1, the shell proteins for HPV in each Gardasil vial. And as a result of the work that we've been doing and the documents we got out from under seal, he figured out that there's 500 times, when he published this finding, that the HPV DNA in Gardasil, the FDA, EMA, regulators all over the world came out and said, oh, that's no big deal. Pay no attention to that. In 2005 and 2006, Merck told the FDA there was no HPV DNA in Gardasil, zero, not any. And so in 2011, when Sinhan Lee publishes this report, say, oh, no, it's no big deal. We all do about it. Internally, that's what they said externally. Internally, they're having cows because they never measured how much HPV L1 DNA is in Gardasil. They didn't have the assays to do it, and they internally say, we can't measure it. We don't know how to we have not measured it and have no intention of measuring it. So this whole sequence of emails are now declassified because Sinhan Lee put them in his report for us, and they're now public.
No.
To me, that's pretty explosive stuff because they were saying that it was 1,000 times less than the FDA limit. Even in 2011, when they finally decided to admit, well, there's a little teeny weeny bit, it doesn't do anything, 1,000 times less than the FDA limit. That was false. It's 500 times greater than the FDA limit. So what does that mean? What is having HPV L1 DNA, the shell protein in Gardasil? It acts as an immunogenic stimulant. It's called an adjuvant. And that increases the immunogenicity of the vaccine. That is how injuries are caused by Gardasil. It's got a superactive aluminum adjuvant. You add this HPV L1 DNA to it, and some people, when they get injected, have hyperinflammation that results in overwhelming their immune system and leads to autoimmune conditions. And there's lots. It attacks ovaries, results in premature ovarian failure, attacks skin, attacks key receptors in the heart that are responsible for keeping the balance of your blood flow proper. That's POTS. That problem they completely denied, and we have that information completely declassified for everybody to use. So, I can tell you where to get it. I can tell you we're going to be doing more and more lawsuits. As a result, one of the things that happened in this litigation with that one suit that kept saying, oh, you can't have all these documents, you can't have all of our adverse events, you can't have our adverse event database. Because it's only one case. That's too much documents, too much work, too much stuff that we have to deal with for just one case. So we got Drew Downing and a couple of CHD people to help us file hundreds of cases. And so we gathered up as many cases as we could, put them into the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, waited out the 240 days, and then when they brought them out, filed 230 are presently filed around the country and consolidated in Charlotte, North Carolina. Another 150 have come out of the VICP and are about to be filed. There's another 50 or so that are in, and as we get more cases, we're going to continue to put them into the VICP and bring them out and file suit. Those cases resulted in our being able to get more millions of documents, and we asked for their entire adverse event database. They call it MARS, the Merck Adverse Event Reporting System. And we got all of their adverse event reporting system in a searchable database. And Lucia Tomovich has helped us organize getting that database, how to search it, and that's some of what's in that telephone book of an expert report. This type of stuff is groundbreaking. This type of stuff has not been done against a vaccine company before. This type of litigation nobody did before. We did prove it can be done, and we're not done yet. We've got lots more to do. These cases that go through the vaccine program, they cost about $10,000 or $15,000 a piece to go through the program, and the program's supposed to reimburse us when we do it, or reimburse it. We had Drew Downing doing a lot of these, and they won't pay him. They owe us a couple $1 million. And they're trying to do that to prevent us from getting cases out and filing suit and keeping the pressure on Merck to keep these cases going. Part of what CHD has done is helped finance getting these cases through the VICP and filed in federal court. Kim Mack Rosenberg's been essential in that. Mary and Giorgio. This form of litigation would not happen without their financial support and the people that they brought in who know about, the tricks and what's wrong with vaccines, letting them loose in a database that's searchable for hot terms, finding smoking guns, that's the result of people like Mary and Kim and Eileen Iorio and the people who were committed, our experts who were committed to getting this stuff done. It wouldn't happen without you people who... So, I know you're probably tired of listening to me. I'm going to tell you one more thing. So, the whole point of Gardasil was to prevent, supposedly, to prevent cervical cancers. And if you looked at one of the, somewhere down here, hold on a second, is my show, it's my show team.
Yes, made of 20.
Now, I'll do it with my hand. So, for about 40 years, pap smears caused a dramatic, like an 80 to 90% drop in cervical cancer. Like that. And so what Gardasil was supposed to do was supposed to drive it down to zero. So what happens? It goes, right about here, Gardasil comes on and it stays flat. Made no difference. For the next 10 to 12 years, 2006 to 2018, flat. So what was the point of exposing all these kids to a vaccine that hyperstimulates the immune system, causes autoimmune conditions in some kids, and they refuse to warn about it? Mm-hmm. When I stuck the evidence in front of their pharmacovigilance people, the people in charge of assessing whether there's negative adverse events they're supposed to be responsible for and do something about, maybe put a warning out and tell people, hey, maybe you don't want to take this because you may be allergic to some of the contents, you may have a hyperactive immune system already, you may have a history of autoimmune conditions, your family may have a history of them. They may not be a good idea for you to get a hyperstimulating vaccine like Gardasil. And I would put, one of the things that happens is when a lot of people who get the vaccine, there's 3 doses, and the symptoms get worse after each dose. That's a dose-dependent reaction, sometimes called re-challenge. That's an evidence of causation. And if you have reasonable evidence of a causal association between an adverse event and the drug or vaccine, they're supposed to put a warning in the label about it. So I stuck that in front of them and said, is that reasonable evidence of causal association? They said, no. And I said, well, how about those 30 or 40 people in Japan where the doctors all said it was undeniably related? Isn't that reasonable evidence? No. I mean, I had a list of 7 or 8 things, killer evidence of a causal association. And they said, there is no evidence at all. I mean, you stick evidence in front of them, and they said there's no evidence of a causal association. They had their blinders on. That's the way they reacted and dealt with all the regulators around the world. It's a misconception that's going on about this vaccine, and I'm sure there's probably others. But now we have the goods, and some of it's declassified, and you could all have it.